let me say the politically exposed, though we have a limited list, it's up to each institution to decide how wide they want to go. So they may decide to go for all elected members. In our law, we don't say it should include MPs, but the law only says this is a minimum list. And because institutions need to have a risk-based approach, they will tend to be more risk-averse and tend to expand the list, say, to all elected officials, for example, and certainly to all senior officials. So, most of the people here, DGs, deputy DGs, maybe even chief directors, will be regarded by banks to be, or not just banks, financial institutions and others to be politically exposed persons. What they're supposed to do when such and their relatives, Chair. So you are right that a bank will likely treat you and I both as PEPs, and if any of our children or spouses also go to open an account, they will also be regarded as such. And if you look at the programs that operate, there's very sophisticated data. They use open source information. They don't use confidential info to risk rate customers. So it gets to the whole issue. And in this FATF recommendation, one of the core recommendations is called customer due diligence, and what institutions have to do when a customer is onboarded and so on. And it just means that if you are seen to be politically exposed, that they've got to have a higher due diligence. They've got to check. So it goes to more senior persons to decide how to risk rate that account. It's not to say no. So they're not supposed to say no. And I know that is a concern that banks and other institutions will abuse their power and close their accounts of people without following a fair process because it's a contractual relationship. And in fact, there's a presentation, I think there's a discussion next week, which we can kind of try and show how we think the system works, but it's for each of these institutions to answer. So they're supposed to do high due diligence. They're not supposed to discriminate, but they are going to ask more questions. They are going to ask more questions, even of those who are related to someone seen to be a politically exposed person. So that's how the system's supposed to work. In terms of South Africa, we are now the only FATF member from 39, from the way I understand it, facing grey listing. Normally it's members who are not, or countries that were not members before. Or maybe there was Iceland, I don't know, I think they too are members. So it was very small countries within FATF. But we're the first major country facing this. And I can tell you, other countries like Brazil, India, Mexico, when I talk to them, they are also afraid of how the system is working. And I think that there are issues there, if you ask me, how the system works. But it's something that we have to take up through the FATF process, and we hope other countries take it up as well. Because we've always argued with FATF that the way these recommendations also work, there are perverse outcomes. So I'll give you an example. A few years ago, it became that major banks would not, the correspondent banks, say from the US, would be too risk averse to deal with certain countries on our continent. Or they wanted a higher, they would charge high charges because of what they would see increased risk with our banks as well. And we championed this cause within FATF and the Financial Stability Board to say to FATF, you have to take responsibility for how others are going to implement. And it's not governments who are telling them how to implement, but the FATF standard sets a minimum. And actually, people are so risk averse, it's done in a very wide sense. And I agree with you, it does have huge consequences. It can have huge consequences for development. So these are things, Chair, that I think need to be taken up in forums like the G20 and so on, the impact on developing countries, and certainly in our regional bodies, many have been assessed, and they too face these challenges. And I think the impact on them is often greater than it would be, I think, on us. So, in terms of saying that corruption in South Africa, when the mutual evaluation team came, the review team, they actually publish their report. So it becomes public. And they would have read from our media. They talk to lots of people in the country when they're doing their review, not just government officials or ministers. They talk to all kinds of people. And they talk to all our authorities, whether it's the police, whether it's SARS, whether it's the FIC, Treasury, Department of Justice. They talk to departments and agencies. And they obviously would then, even just by simply reading our media, be aware of state capture, the media reporting on corruption and suspicious transactions and so on. So what it comes down to, Chair, and let's be clear, and that's why I said whatever process that's there, it's fair. Nobody should be charged just because somebody wants to get their numbers up or we want to meet some standard. But what they're saying is when there are cases of corruption or allegations of corruption, do you investigate them? Does it lead to prosecutions when you find something? And when it comes to corruption in particular, why they raise politically connected or politically exposed persons is to say when the law has to apply to people who are in powerful positions, do the laws apply to them? So if you read the mutual evaluation, Chair, and you'll see on the recommended actions, they refer to those things a lot of the time. So certainly they need to be seen to be our authorities to act without fear or favor and act against anyone, no matter how high or low, if they are responsible for crime. And there certainly shouldn't be discrimination. And I think that's the sort of thing we need to bring out. But to the extent that there is corruption, that failing to act against someone who's politically connected we are judged whether we like it or not as a country. And I think the concern that if I read between the lines the FATF report, it's saying that organized crime is extremely sophisticated today. And most countries, not just South Africa, battle to act quickly enough because we obviously respect due rights. People come to court, they get bail. Before they get charged, there should be a proper process. Nobody should be charged for nothing. And so those things, their view is when they compare our system to others. That's why it's a peer review. They compare us to other countries. And their view of the reviewers is that our systems are well behind the curve. And that's why they scored us badly. So it's their view, but whether we agree or not, that view does impact on other investors and so on. And certainly I know in cabinet, and I think the good thing on our side is by coming with this bill and doing it like this, we are showing that as government, we are committed to fighting corruption. We are showing that our agencies are committed to doing what they should be doing, whatever they should be doing, and doing it fairly and acting without fear or prejudice. Now, whether that is something to assess. In terms of risks, and you're right, Chair, the cash economy is a big problem. So it's for us to identify that it's a big problem and to put in place measures to deal with transgressions in the cash economy. When it comes to, like, if you take a PEP, they differentiate between a domestic PEP and a foreign PEP. So if anyone from overseas, and as I said, they got sophisticated data which recognizes, oh, this person is let's say an MP in Ethiopia has come to South Africa or is from Pakistan and wants to open an account, they will know through their own analytics using open source data. They will then, because I've tried to understand how some of these institutions work. They are then, what the law says, if you're a foreign PEP, they have to put you on the highest category. Peter can explain it, I forget the term, so that you're regarded as high risk. So if a South African goes, I mean, I know of people who go and say their children are studying in the UK or the US and say it's an MP or a senior official in government. Their children will be regarded as foreign PEPs when they even want to open a student account. So the banks, even there, is not supposed to say no, but is supposed to will ask them many more questions. Who's your parents? Are they in parliament? Blah, blah, blah. What's the source of income? That's the due diligence which they have to do. Otherwise, their regulators in their countries will find them. So let's share how the system works. Happy to spend more time to explain this. And I think, yes, it looks pretty bad that when we say that our legislation is not tough enough to deal with criminal syndicates, but then if you just follow the media, they'll talk about the construction mafia, they talk about, I mean, it's around, and investors also read those articles. So it's important for us to government, to the extent where there are problems in certain sectors, to recognize it and to have it in our risk assessment to show that we have plans to deal with it. I'm not an expert on this area, Chair, but I think that our agencies are working, and perhaps they should come and brief the committee at some point as well. There's the anti-corruption task team and so on. They would be doing the nitty-gritty. We just do the policy work as the department. As you know, we don't even have access to some of that info. To answer the other questions from Honorable Abrams, so the peer review was a rating, and yes, it's not, you might say it's 50%, and it may be, but we expect it to score better. They don't actually have a numerical score. We are rated poorly compared to all other FATF members that have had a mutual evaluation. There'll be others that will still be having it in a year or two. They might fare worse than us, but at the moment we are, amongst the FATF members, we are seen to be right at the bottom. Let me ask someone to deal with Section 21. I'll come back to that, and other foreign nationals. So I've dealt with foreign PEPs, but the customer due diligence will take into account that if it's someone from another country, generally you would have to have higher measures, diligence measures that would also have to be put in place. I'm not aware, Honorable George, about Justice having another bill. They may. It's just there are some, and someone from the Justice Department maybe can answer that. But the Poktatara bill is being dealt with by the Safety and Security Department. So that has they had a presentation today as well. So that's the other bill that I talked about. There's no other bill dealing with some of these issues around our grey list. This bill that we brought only deals with all the urgent measures that we think are required for the grey listing. If there's any other issues, we'll bring them through next year or through the normal processes. So I'm not aware of anything else, but again, maybe the colleague from Justice can come in and correct me. In terms of Honorable Siripan, I think, certainly within the administration, as I said, the Treasury now chairs this interdepartmental task team. We have a sub-team there that just deals with the enforcement agencies. And I think that they've all become keenly aware. We've had many meetings. Of course, we need to go beyond meetings. to make them aware of what their responsibilities are in terms of the laws that are here. And that, in a sense, people outside are noticing that we don't use these measures as often enough as other countries use them. That's what the peer review says, effectively. So that's why we get then rated. So they rate us according to what we say we're going to do and what we actually do. That's the gap that we need to close. But I don't know if Peter or Provendry or any of my other colleagues want to come in on any of these questions.
Thanks, Mama. I'll deal with the issue around the foreign nationals. Here again, there isn't anything in the FIC Act that prevents foreign nationals from opening bank accounts. It would just depend on the documentation that's used when they're opening a bank account and what the banks, in terms of their processes, require in terms of a foreign national, whether it's a passport or if it's an asylum seeker, whether it's the certificate that's issued by Home Affairs. So there are a number of ways in which foreign nationals can open bank accounts. So I hope that answers the question in terms of foreign nationals. And I think that the issue around foreign politically exposed persons has been dealt with. So I don't think there's any outstanding issue that I can cover there. Just in terms of the question on the terrorism legislation and why it wasn't included in this provision, the process to amend the Poctatara Act started a few years back, and they've already, and they amend more than just the deficiencies that have been identified in the mutual evaluation report. So there are quite a number of additional amendments that are included in the Poctatara Amendment Bill, and that has gone through a public consultation through the Civilian Secretariat. And I think there were discussions between National Treasury and the Civilian Secretariat in terms of how they would proceed. And that process had already, the bill had gone through the cabinet process and was already ready for tabling when the General Laws Amendment Bill was before cabinet. So those are two, that's why those two, the bill is not included in the General Laws Amendment Bill. So I hope that covers those questions. Thanks, Mama.
Thanks. Anybody else on our side? Chair, I think we've answered all the questions.
On the issue of foreign nationals, it's not about the bank accounts. It's about the businesses that they are conducting and not paying taxes. That's the question that I asked. We're not saying that they should not have bank accounts. That would be against the International Human Rights Declaration. It's about them coming to South Africa, run businesses, cash business, and not pay tax. I'm not sure if SARS is here in the platform. But as Treasury can be able to respond. But if they are here, they must talk to us. The citizens are complaining. There are many spaza shop, every garage in the township and village are foreign nationals doing this and that. And you remember the other time we're dealing with these goods, what do you call these fake goods that are all over the pavements, counterfeit goods. And every time when we deal with the MTBPS or budget in February, South African business come to this platform and ask, what are you doing about counterfeit goods, which the traders are not paying tax? They will be coming now in October when we get the MTBPS and ask the very same question. So that's what we're talking about. And I'm not sure if this bill is talking to that. Thanks. Let me see if there are other members who like to make follow-up questions or comments.
So Chair, SARS is here. Maybe they can answer as well. because I think that's a real concern about the cash economy and whether people are paying taxes. I saw Franz Tomasek here. I'm sure he could answer if you want him to answer.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Mama. So good morning, Honourable Chair, Honourable Members. So I don't think this bill directly deals with that issue, but what it does do is it provides us valuable information with respect to who actually holds bank accounts. If you think about it, SARS gets a lot of third-party data from financial institutions, but that third-party data is only as good as what we are given by the financial institutions. And in order to be able to trace the income, the assets that we would be able to pick up through the reporting from financial institutions, it's essential that we have accurate records of who owns the various companies, who holds those bank accounts, who has that trust. And so all of those are things that do feature in this legislation and which would assist SARS in being able to more accurately determine who has what economic activity, what kind of taxable activity in this country. And so in that fashion, it would assist us. Going a little bit more broadly, where this would assist us is in our own international peer review system, where we too are reviewed as a country with respect to our ability to exchange information with other jurisdictions. And that review process piggybacks on the FATF process to some extent. So where we are able to correct deficiencies that have been identified by FATF and improve our rating in that context, that improvement in rating would ripple through to South Africa's rating with respect to its ability to exchange information with other jurisdictions and obviously to receive information from those jurisdictions in exchange. So I hope that assists. Thanks.
Okay. It looks like we are done with the... Okay. Let's proceed. We'll take the process of the bill to the next level in terms of parliamentary procedures and make sure that there are public hearings so as to give the citizens of South Africa to comment on the bill. Because at the end, we legislate in the interest of South Africans. So we have to make sure that we conduct a fair process to make sure that whatever bill that is passed by Parliament will be in the interest of South Africans. Though we are part of the global village, and there are certain obligations that we have to make sure that we meet. And I don't know, the South African financial institutions, for instance, in 2008, when there was an international financial meltdown, they were insulated. We never faced the risk like other countries have gone through at that time. And they are not credited for that. Instead, they are threatened with grey listing for this and that. All the good work that they do and all the regulatory systems that they have, it's like somebody somewhere is closing his or her eye and focusing on other things. So we have to raise this thing, colleagues, that when international bodies come to our country, they should come here with an intention to assist regulatory bodies, government departments and financial institutions to self-correct and not to punish them, despite the good work that they are doing to make sure that they tighten regulations. So we'll take the process to the next level. Before we break or adjourn the meeting, I hope honorable members, I'm not sure, I'll get Tebogo to send you the response from the Reserve Bank. You remember the other time there was an issue raised by Honorable Shibambo and also Dr. George about the questions that they've asked the Reserve Bank to respond to. So the Reserve Bank has since responded, but from the look of things, they have got lots of information which is outstanding. And I think probably what we should do, because the speaker has emphasized that this matter of Pala farm, she has appointed an ad hoc committee. The matter should be dealt with at that level, rather than all other committees which are part of Parliament handling parallel processes. So that's what I'm suggesting, honorable members. Unless there's another view in this regard, that we take this matter to that ad hoc committee, which we think parties will be given space to go and ask questions or be part of the process. I think the speaker at the right time will outline how the process will unfold. Agreed?
Yes, Chair, I think we need to accept that and not embark on parallel processes as an institution. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Honorable Abraham. Tebogo, I'm not sure if you are in the platform or Wushe.
Yes, I am, sir.
Are there announcements?
Not at the moment, sir. Our next meeting will be next week, Tuesday. And we will send out the invitation and link on Monday.
Okay. Okay. Thanks very much, honorable members, National Treasury, and all other entities. I've seen so many entities today attending here, and also other interested parties, stakeholders, and the media, the parliamentary support teams. Thanks very much. The meeting is adjourned.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Chair.
Honorable members.
Thank you, Mama.
Recording stopped.